You're listening to P&P Pals, Tabletop Role-playing Radio Theatre. Winter winds course through a deep canyon. A yeti lies dead on the shore of an icy river. In a wagon nearby, those it attacked work to recuperate. After dumping another 2 or 3 pound slab of ice from the back of the wagon, Anise ties the leather cover tightly closed.
Retribution? I've removed the last of the ice. Is sensation returning to your extremities yet?
Unfortunately, yes. How do I look?
There's no abnormal swelling or deformity. I'm going to begin examining your limbs. Tell me if there's any tenderness or acute pain.
All right. Anise gently presses her fingers against either side of Retribution's arm. Her hands bounce quickly along it, from shoulder to wrist. The muscles are solid, yielding almost not at all. It's like pressing into a block of hard wax or clay.
Anything noteworthy?
Just dull pain, distributed evenly. I don't think I've broken any bones.
Have you had fractures before?
Oh, several. Mainly in the arms and wings, a few ribs. I once had the radius in my right arm cut.
Cut? Move the joints in this arm, please.
The mercenary gingerly tests each joint in turn.
What cut the bone instead of breaking it?
Enchanted tulwar. It had an unnatural blue gleam to it. In hindsight, I should have picked a different fight after noticing.
A tulwar. That's a kind of curved sword, isn't it?
That is correct. It grows wide and heavy near the tip of the blade, making it well-suited for singular delimbing attacks. Had we crossed paths any earlier in that battle, I imagine I'd have been staggering back to the surgeons, hand in hand. Contemplating that does damage to Anise's placid, professional facade. Retribution takes notice, saying, I would have been fine, most likely. Casualties are common in war, but enduring fatalities much less so.
How might that be?
Typically, it's better to incapacitate 2, rather than linger, killing 1. On top of that, an enemy captive is usually worth something to someone. Besides, if it's a proper, well-funded war, for every dozen of me, there will be 1 of you. Healers that spend long nights cobbling the disfigured and dying back into something that resembles an army.
Truly? Trained surgeons willing to operate on a war front are that common?
Oh, there are some, but I've noticed that faithful folk outnumber them by a wide margin. Based on what Kenneth has said, I anticipate encountering a number of Helm's healers in the coming months. Anise's brow cinches up.
Please spread your arms so that I might examine your ribs. I'm somewhat distrustful of divine healing. I don't think it's understood well enough to rely upon.
I avoid it myself, when I'm able. Most holy types won't turn their backsides toward me, for fear that I might somehow defile them. Still, without their ubiquitous presence, many more would suffer permanent harm.
So, warriors are healed daily? How does the fighting ever come to an end? I imagine the rear lines must be a high priority target.
They certainly are.
Try moving your shoulders and spine, please.
Great effort is spent on scouting and communication to give field hospitals time enough to retreat from oncoming attacks. Threatening that line is key in making lasting progress in modern battle, as whichever side runs out of magical paraphernalia first usually ends up ceding ground. Between you and me, I prefer mass combat to escort contracts. The mortality rate on the road is... Her face was creased with pain before. Now, as she speaks, it seems to hollow. Anise is struck by her sudden melancholy. Retribution in repose is statuesque, ageless and sorrowful. Considering the fatality rates of the militaries I've worked with, I estimate I've been responsible for 40 deaths, fighting in large-scale battles. Anise's mind reels, morality pitted against math. She can't help but think.
Just 40?
Which may seem callous, but Having seen Retribution's efficacy firsthand, Anise's bewilderment is understandable.
Please bend each knee, ankle, and toe.
I've downed at least twice that number traveling the roads, but cut purses don't usually keep physicians on retainer. I'm confident none survived. The thugs that conscripted the girls into their banditry. I couldn't risk your lives through indecision, but killing 5 in one day? It's been weighing on me. I can only hope that...
She trails off.
Or, I had a hand in that, you might recall. Retribution, I never considered...
Then I'd have a soft spot for highwaymen? I think I've given you the impression that I'm a bit more grizzled than I actually am. On the other hand, this is only coming out now because a monster tried to beat me like a drum. I would have kept this to myself otherwise. It turns out I don't have a good sense of how grizzled I actually am.
You do have an undeniable air of world weariness about you.
Anise recalls that Retribution rebuffed a cloud of debris with one of her bat-like wings. She ponders their structure, their similarity to a human hand, marveling at the nerve required to slap away an oncoming attack, unarmed and unarmored.
Please sit up. I need to examine your wings.
Retribution sets up, spreading her wings as far as the confined space will allow.
Honestly, I'm astonished you're in such good health after fighting that beast. I was certain you would be riddled with fractures.
Why? I had my shield. Anise's expression flattens, her mouth hanging slightly agape. She can't, for the life of her, tell if Retribution is joking.
Well, birds have hollow bones. That is what makes them light enough to fly. Bats have solid bones, but they're quite small and thin compared to their overall mass. There's an observable pattern in winged creatures. The price for flight is a frail skeleton, but only usually, it would seem. The bones in your wings are intact. The patagium has several minor abrasions, but I have a balm that will treat those.
Is that what it's called? Patagium?
For other creatures, it is.
My entire life I've had to call it wing skin, which sounds disgusting. Thank you for this new word. Patagium. Conversing casually over the next quarter hour, Anise treats a number of nicks and scrapes before administering an elixir.
Their polite conversation is interrupted by two things occurring in rapid succession. The first is Fran's muffled shouting.
Get in the tent, kid. Hey! Hey! Stupid prick! The second is Anise's dissociation from her familiar.
Something's attacked Fennel.
Before they can act, the din dies down. There's a low voice, too quiet to discern clearly. Fran responds to it.
No, I got it. Everything's all right. You raked my cloak, but that'll stitch up. Everything's fine, kid. You can come back out now. Stepping past Retribution, out onto the bench at the head of the wagon, Anise leans around the corner in time to see Absinthe scramble forward before dropping to her knees.
It's not fine. Fennel is hurt.
In her mind, the red bird was more than hurt. She just couldn't bring herself to say it. Absinthe sees Fennel dashed against the frozen ground, wings held at awkward angles, mortally damaged in some wholly unspecific way. She grips at the air, trying to think of a way to help. A blood-red hawk, a different one, a real one, dangles in front of Fran, dead now for several seconds. His long knife still wedged deep between a wing and its neck, he lets it drop to the ground, then takes a knee beside Absinthe. Looking down, he sees real damage done, with much greater specificity. The throat and stomach have been clawed open, blood spreading quickly through the nearby snow. He silently wonders about permanency. Do familiars forget pain when their mages reform them?
What's happened out there?
A large bird attacked Fennel, but Fran dispatched it soon after. I can handle this situation. Please continue resting.
The tiefling gives a nod. Lowering herself down, Anise approaches nonchalantly. She's in no hurry, for what she sees of her familiar is quite different, and somewhat closer to truth. A broad puddle of red, denatured liquid, heaving and churning in spots.
Absinthe looks to Anise, eyes brimming with barely restrained tears.
I'm sorry, Anise.
The surgeon tries to give the girl a consoling smile.
Fennel can recover from this. She'll be okay. Watch closely.
Anise holds a hand out. A viscous stream weaves its way up from the ground, drawing whatever appeared there before into an irregular sphere. Anise turns her hand upright. The sphere follows the motion, always floating some 3 inches apart.
This is what Fennel really looks like when she manifests on the material plane.
The other two are struck silent, entranced by the wild geometry that slides across the surface and through the core of the sphere. Ron finds his voice first.
I'm sorry. I thought I could scare that thing off. If I had acted quicker, this wouldn't have happened. When we get to Blueport, I can help cover your costs. Anise's eyes narrow in suspicion. He seems sincere, but she can't help feeling that this is some kind of ploy, seeking to expose some bit of ignorance on her part. Curiosity overpowers caution.
My costs.
Fran raises an eyebrow.
For, putting your bird back together? My father had a pet like yours. It was lost a few times over the years, and I remember it costing a sweet pile of coin to set right each time.
That isn't necessary. Fennel will reconstitute herself by morning. Thank you for taking responsibility, though.
That strikes Fran as curious. He couldn't recall having heard of a familiar that could pull itself back together, as it were. Dabbing at her eyes with a sleeve, Absinthe interjects.
She'll really be a bird again tomorrow?
Yes.
Oh, that's good. She's a pretty marble, but she's a prettier bird.
Anise, trying to respect her young student's very earnest concern, stifles her laughter.
Marble?
Yeah. What else is round with swirls in it?
An hour passes before they've compiled an exhaustive list of things that are both rounded and swirled. It's not a long list, but every few minutes someone manages to think of something new to add.
By the end of that hour, Retribution is feeling much improved. Stepping down from the back of the wagon, she beckons to Gren.
How fare you, my lord?
Retribution smiles at the title, rolling her shoulder with a loud puff.
I'm quite well, thanks to Anise. She thawed me out expertly.
You're most fortunate to have her in your employ. A lesser physician may have lost those limbs to the frost.
She nods seriously at that, thinking of several less than necessary scars she bears.
I'm going to investigate the trunk that started this mess. After the day's events, I must assume it's filled with nothing but vipers and spite. For that inevitability, I'd appreciate your company. Franz, too, actually. Where is he?
I'm back here, boss. I'm prepping this bird for the stew pot, and, trying to work out how to take care of what's left of this yeti. She and Gren move around to the far side of the wagon.
A ghastly sight awaits them. The creature's guts and veins have been opened, vital liquids running thin over the frozen ground around it.
Ugh, Fran! Why do you drag the hells to our home?
He tries to look indignant, but in this, Fran can't overcome his self-doubt.
Look. We're right in the middle of the best path through the mountains, and even in the summer, it doesn't get warm here. It'll be ages before it rots on its own. All that said, I think I've bitten off more than I can chew. It shouldn't be any harder than field dressing a bear, but the big bastard's muscles are hard as iron.
Your point is well taken. Anise and Leon are both handy with knives. They should be able to help you finish this up.
Wiping his forearm across his damp brow, he sighs deeply.
Got it. I wonder if that girl has a bone saw.
One other thing. This beastie was bigger, meaner, and weirder than a bear. I appreciate that you didn't walk the other way.
He seemed distracted by something. There's no real bravery to find there. The tiefling shrugs with one arm.
We can only hope all our problems are likewise distracted then.
The trunk is remarkable. It's sea green leather in fine condition, despite being in several inches of water. The padlock on its face, however, is thin and brown with rust.
At least it wasn't some awful aberration. Gren, are you a locksmith, perchance?
Regretfully no, my lord.
I've been looking for someone that can deal with locks for a long while now, but my net always seems to come up empty.
Well, a locksmith I am not. Dealing with locks, however.
With a smooth, economical motion, he braces the point of his still-sheathed sword against the latch. The heel of his free hand drops against the pommel, shattering the lock in one.
I am able.
You're a man after my own heart, Gren. That's how I deal with those, too. It's a wonder anyone bothers to keep anything locked, honestly.
The chest opens smoothly. It's filled only to half capacity.
An immediate disappointment.
But what's in there is interesting.
We'll see.
Several sets of clothing line the bottom of the trunk. They're in good repair, but are otherwise unremarkable. A small purse rests atop, with a bundle of plain rope tucked along one side.
Oof. I should really stop going out of my way for such bric-a-brac. Well, what's this now?
A narrow, lacquered box sits upright in one corner. Opening it reveals a satin interior, nestling a thin wooden wand. It's engraved with gently swirling wisps.
I take it back. I swear to every god to continue risking life and limb for random junk along the highways.
After stowing the lacquered box in a waist pouch, Retribution shuts the trunk, then yanks it from the riverbed. She and Gren make their way back to camp, sharing tales of abnormal acquisitions. A few minutes pass as they clean the box, then load it into the wagon.
When they return to Fran, he's 3 shades paler than they remember. The yeti is similarly changed, in that it's also considerably lighter. Already, parts of it feed the fire nearby, or have been cast off the trail in easily degradable chunks.
You look sick, Fran.
Ugh. These kids are too much for my stomach to handle. Leon had most of its insides minced into sausage before I knew he was here, which is what you'd expect of a farm boy, I guess. But that Anise, she unzipped its back and did something to its shoulders and arms. They just fell off.
She's good at what she does, Fran, but her craft cuts both ways, if you take my meaning. She sees those around her for what they are. Pieces. Pieces that work together, but can also be taken apart. She's a talented, disquieting young woman. Anise.
Withdrawing her arms from a torso, Anise hands Leon a 5-pound liver before turning to Retribution. The bottom half of her face is concealed by a length of once white cloth, now splattered red.
Yes?
Between the polymorphing squirrel, that faintly magical banner, and what we just found, I have a sense that some unfortunate magician had their belongings strewn throughout this canyon.
What you just found? What is it, in general terms?
Some kind of wand.
Does it glow, fume, tremble, or have any odd organic growths?
No?
That should be safe enough. Please place it in the tent under Meryl's care.
She nods, then clasps a hand heavily on Fran's shoulder.
Hang in there, friend. It looks like they'll be done soon.
What remains of their attacker is cast to the wind and land. Better that than left to thaw and freeze, again and again over an age, slowly ablated by the passage of time.
With travel resumed, Retribution invites Kenneth to sit atop milquetoast.
Normally he would decline, but the battle ruined his nerves. He reluctantly agrees. Meryl sits snug in the wagon, alongside its usual occupants.
Anise eagerly invited her, after Meryl expressed a passing, scholarly interest in the items the group had come by.
I'd like to apologize for using your tent as a storeroom.
And a nursery.
Both are fine. I think it odd you didn't use it as a hospital instead.
It's gone unused for some time. But Anise tries to deploy the professional smile, the one practiced for bedside manner.
We can't rely on everyone we escort having a portable trauma ward, now can we? Besides that, Retribution was still cognizant of her surroundings. She wasn't in the immediate danger Leon was. I suppose.
Okay, cut the chit-chat. I need to know what this giant blanket does.
You see, she had taken a nap on it earlier.
Anise sighs, taking hold of the fabric. She does sense something unusual.
Grab hold of the material, close your eyes, and see if you detect anything abnormal. If you hear a fell whisper, open your eyes and hands immediately.
Several minutes pass. There's no sinister murmur, let alone a fell whisper. After a small eternity of waiting, Absinthe hears her sister yawn.
I'm sorry, everybody. I guess it's nothing. Was stripes?
When she opened her eyes to speak, Absinthe saw her hands filled with a bundle of cloth, streaked with electrifying blue and orange. Looking to Janice, she sees a shimmering green silk, Anise, purple hammered velvet, Meryl, a crisp cotton and beige. The others open their eyes and are similarly shocked.
This is amazing. Wait.
Absinthe grips hard, twisting her face up in concentration. Orange linen, dirt-stained hemp, satin with starbursts, a feathery pelt, something that looked like linked chain. New colors and textures spin out from her hands, rippling across the cloth.
This is amazing!
Absinthe, please slow down.
Her thoughts stop, and the dizzying kaleidoscope stops too.
Is it dangerous?
No, I don't think so. It's just visually a lot to take in. I think I'm close to an epileptic episode. You seem to have a natural aptitude for handling this artifact. Please concentrate on just one thing and see what happens.
Just one thing?
The girl looks askance, pursing her lower lip in concentration. In an instant, the magical fabric collapses into a tasseled, tartan scarf, identical to the one she wears. Janice shakes her sister by the arm in delight.
Look! 2 scarves! Sis, I'm a magician!
It's nice to be able to breathe again. Thank you, Absinthe.
We should tell Retribution. Can I tell Retribution?
You may, but later, once we stop to camp. Right now, there's still this.
She pulls the wisp-engraved wand from a pouch. Anise looks it over, closing her eyes, then...
In her mind, a pleasant tone rings out. When she recalls that tone, she sees a phantom image of the floor of the wagon, the secret, false floor, sliding away.
Oh, interesting.
What? What's interesting?
It would seem that this object can sense secret compartments.
That seems really particular.
It might do more, but we don't have much to test it on. I have a few trials in mind for after we make camp.
Janice holds out both hands, shining an ever-widening smile at her teacher.
Yes, here you are. Hold it close and wait for it to offer a kind of note. Imagining that note in your mind will activate the object.
Soon after, something in the wand resonates in Janice's thoughts. Startled, she fumbles the wand, dropping it into her lap. But she saw it, the secret of the panel beneath her made plain. She pulls her sister close, whispering every detail. Absinthe smiles, her eyes bright with gently welling tears.
Magic stuff! We can do magic stuff, and that makes us magical adventurers!
Increasingly magical adventurers, yes. And now you two have an arcane implement to practice with. That wand is of much higher quality than a staff of rough-cut pine, which was the plan I had in mind.
Oh, thank you, Anise!
She launches into a diving hug, aimed right at tender belly. Her sister follows a second after, only slightly less explosively.
Oh, we could get blown up by a fireball tomorrow and it'd be fine, because we'd die as wizards.
Anise has sense enough not to spoil their fun today. Given time, they'll recognize the triviality of activating these particular items on their own. Still, she should encourage them to strive for greater understanding.
Well, let's not go searching for fireballs. There's a great deal left to learn, after all.
The girls keep Anise grappled for so long, she grows tired of holding her arms to her chest. Apprehensively, she rests a hand on each of them. The motion is gentle, but it's not tender. There's no blood, no broken bone or exposed muscle. Without anything to treat, Anise is at a loss for what to do, how to engage. Of things she has left to learn, this kind of closeness must be counted. There is hope for her, a path to knowledge. Because what teacher doesn't learn something from her students? The music for our intro was composed by Walker Williams. We have links to him and his work in the description. P&P Pals is adapted from a 5th edition D&D play-by-post campaign and has been dramatized for your enjoyment. This show is produced by Precarious at best and heard by you. See you again, dear traveler.